Shout out our sponsors, GW Competitions. They run regular draws for you to win different prizes from cash to Rolexes to cars and all sorts. It's all legit and the draw is run through the Google number generator. And the prize is delivered the next day, and if it's cash, it's transferred the same day. The draws are run on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. And you got to be in it to win it.
And welcome back. We're back here again on the Big Ego Media Podcast, and we've got another special guest today. It goes by the name of Nwaka.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I mean, you got a very interesting story, and I'm trying to diversify the sort of people that we have here to actually inspire some of our young people from our culture. So you are a photographer, but not only a photographer that's sort of making a big name for yourself in the scene. Just remind us how old you are, please.
I'm 24.
24. So, I mean, I've seen your work and bumped into you. We were commissioned our football club to take part in a project which you have filmed, which actually launches today. It comes out today.
Yep.
So before we get into all of that, let's start from the very beginning. We would like to know our people, where they're from, how their growth and so on. So where are you from?
Well, I'm grown up in Southeast London, Sydenham. My dad is Nigerian, my mum is English. Been to Nigeria several times, lived there for a bit when I was younger as well. So yeah.
Okay. So what tribe were you guys, you know?
Igbo.
Igbo, okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember much about Nigeria when you've been there as a kid?
Yeah. We spent like a lot of time in the village.
Yeah.
So I just remember like a lot of freedom, like running around in the like bushes and like going to the stream, eating mangoes, playing with my cousins, all that kind of stuff.
Is there sort of kind of innocence to being a young person in Africa compared to there is in UK, do you reckon? Or do you think there's more hardship?
I think people are like the same all over the world. I feel like the foundations of people is just the same. So it's like put them in different environments and they'll, the same sort of things can happen, just they look slightly different. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily more innocent because they got their own struggles and their own positives in life and stuff like that.
Okay, I mean, what about sort of school? How was you at school? Was you quite academic? How was your parents as well in terms of strictness and education?
So no, I was not academic. I was told by multiple teachers that I was like going to be a failure, I told that so many times, and then I'm dyslexic as well.
Okay.
So I've always been really good at like creative things. Always liked like drawing, painting, making like sculptures out of like paper and stuff like that. And then my parents were like not fully against it. I think maybe like being like Nigerian and like the sort of not as much pressure on the girl because I have 3 younger brothers. So like my dad's always seen it as that like I'll get my education and I'll get married like straight after kind of thing. So I didn't have major pressure, although like they did, like I was really good at sports as well, like really good at swimming and stuff like that. So they did like really try and push me in that sort of thinking that there will probably be more of a career in that than like in the arts and stuff like that. But at the same time, I wasn't like too against it. It was more like my teachers that were like quite against it because they were like, the grades are not shown anywhere else, but then she's really, really good at like art. So then they'll sort of like tell me things like, you'll never get a job if you can draw, but you can't spell and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. I mean, you just touched on something quite there. It's quite an African thing, right? In regards to the women are kind of expected, okay, don't worry about your qualification, education, just go and get married to and that's success to you. Yeah. I mean, how important was you to sort of kind of dispel that myth?
I think my parents' relationship when I was younger was like quite like there was a lot of tension and stress like in the house like nearly all the time. So that made me feel like I didn't really like the look of marriage. Like I remember when I was younger, I always used to say like I don't want to get married. Like so that was like never really a dream of mine when I was younger. And then like as I got older, just like more life stuff happening, and I'm just like still don't really see myself in a position where anybody would even want to marry me. And then like got into my career and stuff like that, and then like now, I mean, I have a boyfriend, so hopefully we'll get married. But like, even now, I'm sort of like the pressure isn't like super on marriage, and I think my dad was mainly sort of like scared of that. Like he sort of saw the pressure to like he'll put me on blind dates at like 18 with like, I don't know, I just like tricked me into it. Like, yeah, just invite somebody from Nigeria, take me out to eat, and then this guy's there, and then suddenly next thing you know, I'm finding out that this guy wants to date me or something like that.
Elderly, basically. Like that.
Yeah. So he always say to me like, you know, getting married and having a family is like will bring you much more joy and like much more peace than like having a good career and all that sort of stuff. And like I see what he's saying, but I think it all comes down to perspective and like what your values are in life. I feel like you can have a very purposeful life without those things. I feel like yeah, it's just all where you sort of place your values. So for me, I'm just like always being quite narrow-minded and quite stubborn and like my way or the highway kind of thing. So like, yeah.
And how was your mum towards this?
My mum was like, my mum was very like laid back. So like when I like, if I said to her like, oh, I don't really like the idea of getting married, she'll be like, oh, one day you'll turn around to it kind of thing. Like she was just like, never really showed too much worry about it. And then I guess my mum's the kind of person that's like very much has faith in like the system in terms of like you get your education, then you get a job like where you're employed by somebody else kind of thing. So her like focus was more on like that's more of like where I got the pressure from her, is just like to get a job where I'm getting hired by somebody else so I can bring money into the home like immediately. Yeah. Whereas once again that was sort of against my way because I wanted to be my own boss and do things my way.
I mean, going back to when you were younger again, is that so when you left GCSEs and you're going to do college, what did you study at college?
So I got into college by saying I would do business and English and something else, can't even remember what, textiles, I think.
Yeah.
And then like halfway through the first year, I was just like, I want to drop like all the academic stuff. So I ended up doing photography, textiles, arts, and media. So all creative subjects. So that's what I ended up doing for my A-levels. And then from that, I then went to do a foundation course at Ravensbourne, which was fashion and textiles.
So, I mean, when was the sort of click that, oh, I like photography? Because, I mean, up until now, you've not really mentioned that you even looked at photography. Yeah. So what was the sort of click and how old was you at the time? Was you 17, 18?
I'd say the proper click was like 18. Like before that, I was like experimenting with everything. Like I'm the kind of person where it's like, I take things very, very seriously. So it's like when I was like in primary school, I was like, I want to be an interior designer. So I'd be like learning how to use Excel so I can use the grid to like create like interior design and like take it seriously as if that's my life goal. And then suddenly I changed my mind. I wanted to do fabric patterns, and then suddenly just was like designing every day patterns for fabric. And then but I would always just be experimenting with like loads and loads of different things, like just jumping from one thing to the other. So photography, I did actually that in GCSEs, like as a course. So I'd already sort of like dabbled in it and knew that I really, really enjoyed it, but I wasn't like sure that I wanted to do it. And then in Ravensbourne, when it was like part of the foundation course, because basically as fashion and textiles, there's also fashion promotion, which has fashion photography. So that was the first time of me seeing that photography could be a form of self-expression, and also that art could be a form of self-expression, because in school they teach you that like you just copy the other artists and like try and draw like them or whatever. So that was like where the journey really started for me, because I was learning so much about myself. It was almost like therapy in a way. Like as I take photos and like maybe a month down the line, I'll look back at it and be like, oh wow, this element of the photo really represents what I was going through at that time. And I wasn't even like conscious of it when I was doing it. So I think that's what made me like become really, really passionate, just that self-exploration I was able to do. And also just like the quickness of it, like I could just click the button and then the artwork is there, and then like spending time on Photoshop to like work on the image is quite therapeutic. So I think, yeah, it ended up being a good match for me.
So when was the actual time? So, you know, actually,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be a photographer. And you said that because your parents might have been a little bit worried, right? Because like, I know, well, I don't know personally, but from what I've heard, like in photography and sort of being an artist, it depends on someone commissioning you. It's not like you can just, and how was it when you told your parents, oh, well, this is my decision, I'm going to be a photographer? How did they take it?
I think just through life, like as I said, like when I've picked what I want, I like go head first, as if to say it's like my life goal. So I think they knew as soon as I started doing like photography, they knew that, okay, she's probably going to be very passionate and like pursue this thing. So I didn't actually necessarily need to tell them. After the 1-year foundation course, I then went to do a fashion photography degree at London College of Fashion. But then I ended up dropping out like a few months afterwards.
Why did you drop out?
I just basically, I'd worked so hard like on my photography portfolio, because London College of Fashion is the best university for fashion photography in the world. So I was like, that needs to be the place that I get into. So I worked so hard on that portfolio and building it up that by the time I got there, I generally felt like I was too good for the...
Okay, wow. Jeez, what are you saying? Too good for the college. Say nothing.
So I was there, I was like looking at like everything that I was trying to teach me, and I was just like, this isn't interesting, this isn't inspiring, this isn't helpful, and if anything, I feel like it was slowing down my career rather than building it up. And like the summer before I started the degree, I got like my first few jobs, like paid jobs.
What was that first job like? And did they contact you or did you contact them? How did that work?
They contacted me, yeah. So for every job I've done, I think I've been contacted by like...
So what would you have to do then for sort of budding photographers out there?
Yeah.
You sort of have to promote yourself first, have a website, stuff like that? How does it work?
Yeah, so I had Instagram. Instagram was like my best friend for that. So like I was just posting on Instagram, and like I think people like to see the growth. Yeah. Like, so for like I'd say maybe like a year and a... Yeah, let's say like a year before like I got into London College of Fashion, I just started like posting like all of my experimental shoots, like even if it was like one photo out of like a whole shoot, like I would just post it. And then like I've even had like clients tell me that they've been like following my work for 2 years because they sort of saw the potential at the beginning and they wanted to see where I'd go, and then they finally hired me when they felt like I got to that point. So it was just consistently posting, consistently put it out there. I would go to events as well, like with other creatives around my age group and stuff. So I think making that connection with other people that are in the same boat as you, like trying to get into the industry, is really key, because ultimately if you're all gonna get up there, then you all bring each other. Exactly, yeah, you all bring each other up. So that I used to go to like a lot of events, like a lot of exhibitions that we would just like put on, like with like maybe funding that we could get from like council or like money that we raised ourselves, and we'll just put on exhibitions and just have link ups, and like every exhibition will be like more and more people kind of come. So I think through that you like build a following and that kind of thing.
So can you talk about your first one? So what company was it? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, so my first one, if I remember correctly, I believe it was this company called Unif. So they're like a LA fashion brand. Oh, so
all the way in LA, they knew about you. That's mad.
And so it was quite a big deal as well, because I really liked their clothes at the time as well, and they like had like 1 million followers on Instagram and stuff like that. So they would like sent me like their lookbook at the moment, and they asked me to like pick all the clothes that I liked, and then they shipped it down, and I shot them with my friends.
So they trusted you, they sent you all the clothes and then trusted you to sort of pick your own sort of place to shoot it, pick whichever you wanted, so they gave you free roam?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I had to communicate everything with them, like they'll like ask if I could send photos of the location before they sign it off and stuff like that, and like the models, so that they could sign off the models, and like the kind of photos, like I had to put mood boards together to show them the sort of photos I'm trying to take. So yeah, there was definitely like communication back and forth, but generally they like just liked my style, so they were like, we just want it to look like how your photos look, so they were quite open.
I mean, you don't have to tell us the amount, but like I guess whenever we do things at the beginning, like when we was asking for sponsorship, for example, for Henry Football Club, we wouldn't quite know which, like if someone offers us something, oh yeah, that's brilliant, oh my god, yeah, not knowing that the value of your actual brand. I mean, the first offer to you, was you like, oh yeah, or did you kind of negotiate? Was you quite
Nah, I just took it.
Yeah.
I was like, because I didn't know like what you even get paid.
Yeah.
And like, obviously what you hear is that like artists don't really get paid well. And so I'm like, how old am I? Like 18, 19. And they've offered me like $500, which in my opinion was like, oh wow. Like, and because I've been like so dedicated on my photography, I never got like a part-time job or anything like that. So this is like my first time getting paid for anything at all. So that was like such a huge deal to me. So I just took it. But
And it must have been a proud moment as well.
yeah. So yeah, I was really gassed about it. I told my friends and they were like, oh my gosh, that's so much money, blah, blah, blah. Now I know it's not that much money, but at the time I didn't know that. So
what you're basically telling us now to hire you, we're looking at, woo! God trying to get you to do a Hackney Wick or one, but like, whoa, I don't know what your budget is now, to be fair. But I mean, that must have been, I mean, when you go back to your parents and this proud moment, your first gig, and said, look, I've got this, and how they reacted to it. Is your dad thinking like, actually?
not yet, you know, not yet.
No?
So at first I kind of just like, okay, this is all right, but like that, like especially my dad, like a lot of the time when he looks at my photos, he's just like, what even is it? Like,
you don't understand it. That's a very African man way of thinking, yeah.
And then my mom's kind of like, yeah, I feel like my mom's just quite chill with like her response to everything. So she's just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's all right. But her stress more so at that period was just like, Nwaka needs to get a job and like bring money in. So they were both sort of just like, it's all right, but it's not like a consistent income or like there's no like, it's not like safe enough like for them. So it was like, yeah, kind of half-hearted.
I mean, you said just now that your dad looks at some of your photos and like, what's that? I mean, where do you draw your inspiration from when you're trying to think of an artistic way or sort of portraying something?
I just think the world, like I get most of my ideas really just from like my imagination, and so I feel like naturally your imagination is fueled just by what you're surrounded by, what you see, and I'm like very, very observant. Like I love just like being that silent person in the corner of the room that just listens to all the conversations and watches people and how they act and like reflect on it and think, what does this mean about me? Like, you know, like ask myself deep questions. So I feel like all of that means that, yeah, I just have like a really buzzing like brain like all the time. Like I'm always thinking of new images and stuff like that. So it really just comes from my mind. With like clients and stuff, usually they have like a concept that they want to portray. So then with that, I'll just think of the concept and be like, okay, what does my brain think of when I think of the concept? Like, how does that stimulate my imagination? And then I just put that into a mood board.
And how long does it sort of go from pitch process? So like a client reach out to you, say, oh, Nwaka, look, we want to create this new design for this new clothing. This is kind of what we want. And you have to go and actually create the whole concept yourself.
Yeah, sometimes they actually already have the concept, but if it's a case where I have to like create the concept, then yeah, they'll give me like a piece of information. So like, for example, if I'm doing like EP cover artwork or album cover artwork or something like that, like they'll send me the album or the mixtape or whatever, and like I'll listen to it and I'll see what comes to mind, and then I'll put an initial mood board together, and I'll take that to the artist. We'll have a conversation and be like, tell me your personal experience. So I'll be like, this is what I've interpreted from your project. Now tell me what you actually
so it's a
trying to say.
collaboration and compromise,
exactly,
basically.
yeah. And then we can like go from there and like build an image that like they're really into. With like, I'd say like very commercial clients and stuff, they're usually quite like specific. They already know what they want. Like they usually don't come to me for like the main overall idea.
I mean, so at which point how soon after did you get the one where you thought, oh, Dad, Mum, I've made it? What was the first one that you said, actually, wow, this gave me a big payment and it's a big brand? What was the sort of first one?
My first one, I think I was like 19, 20, and I got...
You're still pretty young.
Yeah, a job for the BBC, doing like a documentary for like their online content. I think it's BBC Three.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that one I was like really, really gassed about that. Like I told my parents and both of them were like, oh wow, because this is now like a company that they're aware of.
But now it's BBC.
Yeah,
like they watch
exactly.
BBC every day.
So that one they were like really, like they actually celebrated me. Like they were really happy about that one. And then I kind of like, from that point on, didn't hear as much of like the stress of like, oh, you're on the wrong path, or like you need to get a proper job, or yada yada.
So I mean, then after that, work has just been sort of free flowing, and you've been doing so much work. What has been your sort of your favorite shoot? So I know you got so many. What's been kind of your favorite shoot? What stands out? That if someone's to look at your portfolio and go, oh wow, like which one would you say?
That's, you know what.
Or they're kind of all your babies. You don't want to pick.
I mean, no, there's definitely something I prefer. Like in terms of like personal projects that I find in myself, like those are all my favorite ones. So I've done like short films because I do film direction as well.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So for example, the BBC thing was like me directing the documentary. So those are all my favorites. But then in terms of like client work, I'd say I did this EP cover for Scribs Riley, and that one like really pushed me like they actually gave me so much room to just be creative and like do an idea that I'd actually never done before, so I didn't have evidence that I could do it, but they trusted me anyway, and then I ended up creating something that was like brought me so many jobs after that. So that one I was really grateful for, simply for the fact that they allowed me to like push myself and experiment, and like it ended up looking really good.
And are there sort of brands and people that reach out to you and who offer big money and you're like, nah, it don't sit well with who I am?
Yeah, 100%.
How do you sort of differentiate between that? How do you sort of choose which one works for you?
I think it's literally just like looking at the project and be like, do I resonate? Like, I feel like if I don't feel excited by the idea of like if I'm envisioning myself going to this photo shoot, does that excite me? If it doesn't, then I would rather not do the job, because it's a lot of hard work. Like it might seem like a simple thing, but all the planning beforehand and like also negotiation and then contracts as well. Like it's a lot of stress to go through for something that I'm not passionate about.
And I mean, let's just talk about that, because the cameraman will tell you I'm rubbish at planning.
Okay.
Like I'll tell them a concept, all right, guys, I want to do this, let's film. And they'll be like, no, we've not planned it. I mean, how much planning goes into, like for example, the one you done with Nike, how many weeks of planning you have to go in advance before you sort of sit down and get to where you need to? I mean, let's talk through the whole process in return to you've planned it all out. You have to come and photograph everything, and then the editing process, and then the final release. Like how long is that little lifespan?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the client. So for the Nike one, they were like in a major rush to get the photos done. So it was like, I think I was actually contacted about the shoot maybe 2 or 3 weeks before, which isn't actually a long time in like compared to what I normally get. And then for that, as I said, like usually with bigger brands, they usually have the concept solid anyway. So they already had that all solid. They just wanted like small input in terms of like how I'd get the angles and like the color of the backdrops and stuff like that. So it's quite minor things. And then it's just like me on the day to sort of like do my thing and like make sure I'm getting those angles and like getting what we need out of the talent and all that kind of stuff. So and then after that, they got the images literally on the day, and then they actually had their own retouches for that one, so I didn't have to edit the images. So yeah, and then obviously the images are only coming out now, so it's been like a month since then.
And I think you spoke earlier about you've been quite busy editing something else you've been doing for a month. I mean, in regards to editing, how does that work? What do you need to do? Because I mean, if you're taking a photograph or something, it's there.
Yeah.
What else you need to do to it to sort of make it really polished?
Yeah. So editing is an interesting one. So like with the Night one, they were trying to go with like something that felt a bit more raw and natural and stuff like that. So I feel like for that, it's not like as long of a process, and it depends on the amount of images that they want as well. So like with the one I'm working on at the moment, there is 30 images, which is my idea of like so much. Like it's taken me like a whole month to work on it. And then also I have to edit to like I always make sure I edit to like the highest standard possible. So I'll literally like zoom in so I can literally see the pixels and make sure that everything is like perfect and smooth and like there's just no imperfection, so that if it was to be blown up on a billboard, nobody would look at it and be like, oh, there's that little mistake kind of thing. Yeah. So that process just takes like a lot of time, and like I always charge like significantly more for that, because also the screen time is not good for like your eyes, headaches, all that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, once again, like in order to take that editing on, I have to like be very excited about it. But it is like quite a therapeutic process as well, just like going through it and like perfecting and like making sure that that vision is exactly how you saw it. Whereas if you send it off to another editor, you can't always guarantee that they'll get exactly how you would. So.
I mean, so how do you now calculate your fee in terms of, do you have sort of a state on your website where be like, okay, to hire me for this day or for, how does it work now?
Yeah, literally, the fee changes depending on the client. So I have like my minimum fee, and then depending on the client, it could be significantly more, significantly less. Depends on the usage time as well and how the client is going to use the image. So if they're using it for, let's say, like 2 years, that's going to be significantly more money if they're using it for like 2 months kind of thing.
Okay, so listen, so the photography, you actually still own it then?
Yeah.
And you kind of have to license it to them?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah, and then if they want to buy the photography like outright so that they fully own it, then they have to pay like significantly more for that as well.
Okay, there's some money in this, isn't there?
Yeah, that's kind of...
There's some money. I might try to do photography now. I joke, I know it takes many years of learning. I mean, so you mentioned earlier as well that you're the oldest of 4.
3. Oh, there's 4 together.
Yes, there's 4 of you, so you've got 3 younger brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, you grew up in South London, Sydenham, so it's kind of a rough area per se, not too far from Catford Forest here and so on. Is that how much you take your responsibility as an older sister? And it's kind of not the same when you're the older sister instead of being the younger sister kind of thing. How does that relationship work with your brothers?
It's an interesting one. I feel like we've been quite blessed. Like, yeah, so the schools we've gone to is like, we went, like, not the best schools and stuff like that, and like the area we're in, like when we were growing up, there was like a lot of like issues going on and stuff like that. Not as much nowadays, but still some. So it was like there was a lot of opportunity for us to get pulled into certain situations, and there were like a few slip-ups here and there. But for the most part, we was quite blessed that like we had 2 next door neighbours, both of them like African families, and like all our parents really got along, and we're all like, all the kids are like same age group. So our parents would like do a good job of like making sure that one of us was always there to support the other. So like,
so building that village of
exactly,
the community.
Yeah. So I feel like, yeah, so if like, let's say my next door neighbour's like, the mum is like can't get home in time to like pick up the daughter from after school club or something like that, then they'll call my mum, and then my mum will say, hey, can you talk to me and be like, hey, after school, can you go pick up so-and-so, bring them to our house, and then like we'd sort of have that. So I think that was like a major blessing for us, because there's literally people who live literally next door who weren't a part of that are like gone down a completely different route. So I think that community aspect was really, really key for our upbringing. And then I think, yeah, in terms of like my brothers, like they're all very like loud, full of energy, like it's hard not to notice them kind of thing when they're in the room. So there's always kind of like that worry, especially with my youngest one who's like still in secondary school, of like knowing that he's naturally like a loud person and like can draw that kind of attention, and like goes to a school that has like quite a bad reputation for like children not going in the right direction. So there was that worry, but I think it's just a lot of like communication, and like I talked to him like a lot, just like casual conversation about like what career does he want to do, and like what does he enjoy just like doing for fun and stuff like that, and like he does like basketball after school and things like that. And then I think him also like seeing me doing like my creative career, being self-employed, and then the brother that's just younger than me is studying maths now at university. So it's like seeing these completely 2 different like examples, I think has been really, really helpful for him as well.
And you just touched there on sort of working for yourself there. How important is that for you? Because I know how that feeling and the pressure that comes with it as well. But I think it's such a beautiful feeling when you can work for yourself.
Yeah. And
what do you think is the best advantage and disadvantage of working for yourself?
The best advantage is, I feel like I'm the kind of person that would get fired immediately, like if I worked for like somebody else, because I'm like, I feel like I can be quite spontaneous in my way of doing things, but still like know how to be very organized in that spontaneousness. So like, I feel like it can only work if you're working for yourself. So that is like one really, really good thing for me, just sort of having the room to sort of like, for example, next month I'm planning to sort of like take a break to focus on like another side of my business, which like that kind of freedom is like very, very helpful. And then being able to really like create flexibility in like how I want to, like, let's say if I've got like a financial goal, I can be like, okay, I can switch up the types of clients I want to work with for like this period of time so I can reach that goal. Or if I want to do more passion projects, then I can, know to save up and then like do that. So I'd say that's like a lot of freedom. And then the negative sides I'd say is that people are always like trying to take advantage. Like, I think people like see me and they're like, oh, like, he's a young brown girl, like woman as well. It's like, I feel like they immediately think that I don't know what I'm doing. And then I can tell that as well and sometimes I'll even like test my clients out. Like, I'll ask them a question that I know the answer to see if they'll tell me the truth. And 9 times out of 10, they won't tell me the truth.
Wow.
Yeah. So that side of it can be tricky. Like, you really need to know like the ins and outs of the business side. Like, to just be creative on your own is a bit tricky. Like, you need to enjoy the legal side of things and all that sort of stuff to know it. Or if you're in a position to like hire a lawyer or something like that, you could do that as well. But most people obviously can't afford that when they're first starting out. Yeah. So trying to learn that as much as you can at the beginning is really key.
So how many projects would you say you need kind of roughly to sustain you for a year?
For a year? I'm not going to tell you like that. I usually aim, so every year I try and like cut it down. So last year I was doing like 3 projects a month. So that was sustaining me. And now this year I'm trying to do 2 to 1 projects a month, and that has been sustaining me. But every year I always basically aim to like double my income like from the year before. So because of that, I'm like able to cut down on the amount of jobs I do every month, but charge more for those jobs.
I mean, how important is it for you as a woman of colour per se, should we say, that what you're doing and the positive impact that you're having in regards to these big brands that are actually reaching out to you and say, look, we want you. Had you feel a sense of responsibility and representation for people alike? Yeah,
100% do. I think like just being professional is like so like, anybody that knows me, like I take that so very, very seriously. Like, I always want to make sure I turn up to every meeting, like always make sure I'm fully prepared. Like, I always know, like I even, maybe know more than I need to. Like with like my editing, as I say, like I will literally like, zoom in right so I can see the pixels to make sure that there's literally no flaw whatsoever. Like my communication, I always try and make sure that is top notch. Like, I'll even over communicate. So that side of things, like I take that super seriously because I know that the stereotype is that wouldn't be, that let's say black people are not as professional as, let's say, white people. So I take that responsibility really, really seriously. And then also just like, as like a woman, I say like just being like, holding my own. Like, I feel like the expectation is just like, oh, she needs to be like looked after, or like, oh, she wouldn't really know, or like she's not going to be earning that much money or whatever. But then like I will always like sort of stand strong. Like, if I want this amount of money, then that's what you give me, or I just won't do the job. And like they're nearly always super surprised when I'm like, I'm not doing the job then, and then they're like, oh, actually, we can give you the money. And it's like, oh, okay, so you had it all along. So I think that as well is like something that I take really seriously.
So who would be kind of your ideal kind of brand that you've not worked with yet? Like, if you had to put it out in the air, someone's watching from that brand that you've always wanted to work with, and you're putting it in the air now, who would that be?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's a hard one for me to answer because my focus has never been so much on like the brand itself. It's more about like, what is the story you're trying to tell through this specific project. So like, I don't, and I think another thing is like just building up my community as well is really key to me. So I feel like I'm very like passionate about like working with other people that inspire me, that are like on the same level with me, which is so many other people. So I don't even know where to start with like who that would be. And I think I work with like a lot of them as well. Like, I reach out to people and be like, oh, like I like your stuff. Like, maybe we should do something together at some point.
And in regards to just like your old school, have you ever sort of been back and like done like any workshops over there to just let the young next generation know, like, oh, guys, you can be a photographer?
I haven't, I think about that all the time though. But
you should reach out.
Yeah, it's a reach out thing. Like, I've thought about it, but I haven't like taken the time to think about how I'd actually go about it. But yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
And if you've got any words for any 14, 15-year-olds right now who are at school, teachers telling them you ain't going to amount to nothing, what are you going to tell them?
I'd say just, try your best to just be confident in yourself, to like find self-assurance and take yourself seriously. Like, I think if you take yourself seriously, then like it's hard to deny like somebody who's really just passionate about them. And I feel like if you're passionate about yourself and you take yourself seriously, you will make better decisions for yourself, for your future. And feel free to experiment as well. Like if you don't know what you want to do, you don't feel confident in the career that you're trying to do, just experiment and like figure out what sticks. Like what do you like, what comes naturally to you. Because I guarantee like whatever you like, there is 100% a career somewhere out there in the world that can make you loads of money for that exact thing. So, yeah.
And guys, that's another Big Ego Media podcast, and that was there. It was Nwaka. No, I put it in there. Waka.
Yeah.
There you go. Amazing. Thank you very much for coming up.